Titans. Whoa. I've got a build I think you like. One of the things that cements a build as one of my favorites is for the thing to actually be good, but just as important is for an awesome theme. Fire and ice, teleporting, western style yeehaw. They've all got a certain vibe to them which nails a gameplay fantasy. That idea of a thematic build can absolutely be said for this. The thing truly makes you feel like it's got lightning at its fingertips. It's aggressive, massively spammy, really good and fun to pull off. It's no slack, getting some really solid clears in my solo GMs. It's just mwah! Fun factor through the roof and a satisfying gameplay loop. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's the quick build. Aspects a touch of thunder, Storm's Keep, Storm Grenade or Pulse, any melee will do, Thruster or Rally Barricade. Fragments a Spark of Magnitude, Shock, Frequency, Resistance. Here's your mod setup. Super can be either one, exotic armor is Crest of Alpha Lupi, and your best exotics are Praxic Blade, Arc Conductor Ergo Sum, or Berry Bloodline alongside a very ammo efficient heavy ammo sword. But as long as you've got a sword, you'll be sorted. If you're using Ergo and you want Blind in the kit, switch Magnitude or Resistance for beacons. Your armor set is an extremely important part of the build, with it being the full Sage Protector set. Right, this build is one that puts almost all of the power of your kit into Grenade and class ability. Exotic, aspects, mods, all play off class and nade, and then through Sage Protector, you skirt around the cooldowns of these abilities to get both of them recharged at some bonkers speeds. I know I said it probably 10 seconds ago, but Sage Protector's 2 and 4 piece here is a real must. I'm not going to go into as much detail as I did for the last video, so your wrapped up version, TLDR, is this. The 2 piece makes sword hits give 3% grenade and class energy, and with the 4 piece you block for just over a second, then land a hit, and for 7 seconds you get a load of sword lunge range, a nice 10% sword damage bump, and the energy given back from the 2 piece spikes to 8% energy on landing a sword hit. This means your frames that land a lot of hits like casters, vortex and adaptives are great, and ones that don't hit a lot aren't recommended. Sword hits here though is very broad, in that most extra damage effects that swords can trigger, like Scorch from Incandescent and Burning Ambition, or an Ergo Sum with Arc Conductor for example, counts as sword hits. If you do want a proper breakdown, I'd really encourage watching just the start of this video. It's going to be a lot more comprehensive. Just know if it can hit a lot from its frame or due to perks it can trigger, it's a great pairing for the build. So the regen of these 2 abilities will be very quick thanks to Sage Protector. And wouldn't you know it, I've used my gigantic gamer brain to pair up 2 aspects that play off both nades and class abilities. Touch of Thunder is your first, and it's your grenade focused aspect. It buffs 4 grenades, Flashbang, Lightning, Storm and Pulse. But for this build, only 2 grenades really matter due to how much better they are than the rest, in Storm and Pulse Grenade. Storm Grenade, after being thrown, will do its regular lightning strikes, but now also creates a roaming storm which will, albeit very slowly, track enemies. And with Pulse Grenade on damaging an enemy, it'll spawn in Ionic Tracers with a 1 second cooldown in between trace spawns, and Pulse deals up to 25% increased damage whilst it lingers on an enemy. Storm here is your more damage orientated grenade, and Pulse is your ability regen and survivability focus one. They're very interchangeable though, don't feel tied down to any set grenade. And supporting your class ability is your second aspect, Storm's Keep. If you've got Barricade, this will instantly give you 4 stacks of Bolt Charge, and every 0.6 seconds you'll passively gain a stack of Bolt Charge, and weapon damage will now discharge Bolt Charge at max stacks. With Thruster, the effect is super duper simple. You get 6 Bolt Charge stacks on using the ability. That's it. Your class ability is also where you'll be healing from in the build, thanks to Crest of Alpha Lupi, which is a very stacked exotic as far as effects go. When you drop the Barricade, you restore 160 health and 110 shields for yourself and allies, and with Thruster, you restore 60 HP for yourself and allies. Plus, whenever you heal allies, you gain class energy back. If you're using a Barricade and you're dealing weapon damage behind it, you'll progress a counter that will trigger 30 HP healing pulses from the Barricade, with different weapon archetypes scaling like so, many thank yous data compendium, and on top of all of that, your super now makes an extra 7% orb of power. And rounding out the last of your abilities, melee you have free choice of. Genuinely, whatever you're feeling, you can pick. I'm partial to Thunderclap, but missile or shoulder charging into things also works really good. And for the rest of your subclass, you're taking Spark of Resistance, Magnitude, Shock, and Frequency. Resistance here is just for a little extra survivability, where you get a 25% damage resist when surrounded by 3 or more enemies. Magnitude makes lingering grenades last longer, so Pulse now lets off another 2 pulses, which means more ionic traces, and with Storm Grenade it cools down 1 more lightning strike, and your roaming Storm lasts for another 1.5 seconds. Shock makes your grenades apply Jolt, which is self-explanatory, but seriously strong with how many grenades you're making. And last but not least, Frequency. This aspect does all this when you land a melee hit, but the part we really care about is that whenever we're amplified and gain Bolt Charge, we have another stack added on top. Right, for your gameplay. I'll kick it off with the Thruster vs Barricade argument because both can work here. For me, Thruster will be the way I always like to play this build because it feels so much more natural to use, especially when playing around Sage Protector. You do have a smaller amount of healing, but it's an amount that's plenty in the build and your gameplay will feel very snappy and much faster to pull off. And although in cooldown, Rally and Thruster are very similar, this feels like it's the much better user of having a high class stat. The big takeaway is that this feels much nicer to use. You commit so much less time than a Barricade. That said, Rally does have its perks. It's essentially a guaranteed full heal, which means you can get really aggressive and have a get out of jail free card. It's also really nice for any enemy that you can't fight up close due to them having a one-shot melee or just existing at ranges where a sword won't work. Being able to discharge Bolt Charge from a distance means the build has all ranges covered, and for your teammates who are using weapons too, you'll be leaving a trail of barricades behind you for them to fight behind and build up Bolt Charge for themselves. Whatever variant you're going for though, Thruster or Rally, being brawly with the build is important. The more you fight, the more you're able to drop the cooldown of class abilities, and that means more heals. With Thruster, again, it's much more seamless in its aggressiveness. You're dashing around enemies and being slippery, but with Barricades, your plan is to get in, drop a barricade, use it as some cover to prep Sage Protector, then go in and fight. Where you can, you're really not sitting behind these barricades for that long. For some of the weapon combos I mentioned before, Praxig, Ergo Sum, or Berry Bloodline with an ammo-efficient sword. With Praxig, you're gaining an on-demand way to get amplified, which this build doesn't have as you've not got knockout, but this can also make loads of Bolt Charge stacks through Impact Core. With Ergo though, it's great for just a much more simple effect, in that the thing has some bonkers regen when paired up with Sage Protector. I'd really push people towards using Arc Conductor, as every chain lightning hit will trigger Sage Protector, and if you have Bolt Charge active, it'll count as weapon hit, so it'll cause you to gain more Bolt Charge. Plus, as arc damage, it's also a way to get amplified for just killing stuff with them. One change I sometimes like to make is when I'm using Ergo, I'll add in Spark of Beacons and then take off Magnitude or Resistance. You lose a little damage or survivability in having grenades last slightly shorter and losing DR when surrounded, but you then get blind in the build, and all of Arc Conductor's chain lightning kills will blind from that spot that the enemy dies from, giving you some really good CC. Berry Bloodline and a heavy sword is also a nice weapon setup, in that Devour will give grenade energy and 70 HP chunks of healing on landing final blows. It's nothing too flashy, but it's just a great weapon setup for more survivability and grenades, which this build appreciates both of. And that's pretty much it for the gameplay tips. Be aggressive, brawl, play around keeping Sage Protector's 4-piece high, and you'll have loads of healing, grenades, and lightning strikes. For the rest of the build, your stats are probably the biggest thing that have an impact on your gameplay, in that you're really wanting to run high class and high weapon stats. The overshield you get from high class is applied to you so consistently that the amount of health it can give over a fight that goes on for even just a little bit of time adds up so much. Specialist Armour also has the added benefit of its secondary stat being weapon, which means this build can spend basically the entire time using special and heavy and get away with it from doubled ammo breaks. This is especially the case if you're wanting to run Berry Bloodline with a heavy sword or Ergo Sum. They're pretty ammo consuming swords, but high weapon stat really lets you get away with using them. Past those two, you'll want to focus on Grenade and Super. For your mods, this build is one that is hungry for stats, so this setup aims to feed as many as possible. On the helmets, you're taking double super font and one siphon mod matching the gun you'll be using the most. Arms is double grenade font and one bolstering detonation. Chest is charged up, double melee damage resist. Legs is 2 weapon fonts and elemental charge if you're using pulse grenade, as the ionic tracers give very consistent armor charges, and stacks on stacks if you're using storm grenade. Class is double class font and powerful attraction. All these font mods will be giving plus 40 in their respective stats, so try push class, weapon and grenade as high as possible, with ideally 200 in class and weapon and 100 in grenade, with anything spare going into super. And last but not least, if it's Renegades, you can skip here. Otherwise, there are some seriously good mods here that this build can take advantage of, but the best of them is Dielectric. You'll gain a stack of bolt charge when defeating arc debuffed enemies, which is technically 2 stacks with Spark of Frequency, and rapidly killing arc debuffed enemies will restore 40 HP and spawn in a chunky orb of power, which gives 7% super energy. Otherwise, if you're using Praxic Blade, take Kinetic Rupture. If you're using Arc Conductor Ergo, take Elemental Orbs Arc, and every build should be using the Sword Storm combo. Otherwise, the rest of your mods should look like this. And that's a wrap. Not a massive video here or any crazy combos or anything, just a really fun, steady build that gives Arc Titans a way to play aggressively while staying healthy and gets you out from behind the barricade. I'm really not finished with Sage Protector on Titan, got at least 3 separate builds for Titans and a cool one for Hunters, so expect those soonish. For now though, that is about it from me. See ya!